In this video, I am going to tell you a story. A story of how I started as a call center representative, how I was as a call center newbie, or basically just how I started in the call center industry. Because I have read some comments asking, is it really scary, or I'm very nervous, I don't know if I'm going to pass my call center training, but I want to let you know that everybody starts from the beginning. Nobody starts as an expert. So I want you to know that I am here to tell you that story because I want you to have someone to relate with and to tell yourself that, well, yeah, she started as a call center agent. She started years ago and she also felt that way. And it's very normal to feel first-time jitters, especially if you are not very used to this kind of environment. Sometime during my first year in college, I remember asking one of our seniors that what will be my work or what will be my job when I graduate from this course. So I was very curious what kind of job I'll get into once I graduate. And one of my seniors told me that, well, you can apply in the academe, you can be a teacher, an instructor, you can also apply in call centers. So that's where it hit me. I mean, what are call centers? And I did not really have any idea about it just yet, except that probably people there are taking calls. And since my course was communication arts, it probably has something to do with communicating with people. And in that case, call centers could be a good starting point as a fresh graduate. And when I reached my third year in college, I just found this ad from somewhere. So Facebook was not yet very common back then. That was like 11 to 12 years ago. So we were not really using Facebook that much. It was still Multiply. So I found this ad and then it says that they are hiring for a telemarketing company, a small telemarketing company in Davao. And because I went to school in Davao. So I really wanted to try it because I also wanted to earn extra income while studying. And just so you know, I was a full-time student with a full load of units, and the shift would be 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. So that's a graveyard and full-time job. So even though that was the case, I still really wanted to try it. So I did. I had to travel from my apartment to the office for about 45 minutes. So I really had to wake up early. Do you know how much my first salary was? I was paid 500 pesos weekly. So if you think about it, 500 pesos every week for a full-time job might be small, but by that time, it was already big for me because I was still a student and that was still additional income. But somehow it could not compensate with the work that I do because I take calls for the entire 8-hour shift. Plus it was a night shift and there was no hazard pay, there was no night differential, there were no benefits, nothing at all. But I lasted for 1 month, just 1 month, more than the rest of my classmates who lasted for a day and 1 night or 2 days. So I did not really know why I lasted for 1 month, but I did. And I just told my supervisor back then that I could not take it anymore because I was getting sick. I still had to attend my classes full-time and I still had to work. So I eventually left and I was still a student, so that was probably understandable, right? So I'm not going to delve into details with that first job that I had because I did not really consider it a legit job. I found out after a couple of months that it was not really legit and it was kind of a scam. So it was good that I left before everything else got terrible. So before I graduated from college, our university had a job fair for us, exclusively for us students. So I attended and I submitted my resume to three companies. Two are call centers and one was a retail shop or retail store in Davao. And then I got hired for uh, one of the call centers. When I applied, I was in Davao. I was a relocator. I was promised a relocation allowance along with 3 days and 2 nights stay for the first time that I would be in Cebu, because the call center that I applied for was obviously in Cebu. So I considered it my first ever legit job because, well, it has proper documentation and there are benefits, the salary is well documented, everything is well documented. So since I applied in Davao, I was considered a relocator. I was promised a relocation allowance of 20,000 pesos plus 3 days and 2 nights of stay for when I would arrive to Cebu. And yes, all of those were given to me completely. I had someone with me who was assigned to be roomed with me for those 3 days and 2 nights stay, and she was also from Davao, so I wasn't really alone when I relocated to Cebu. On our first day in Cebu, we had to have our medical examination, the usual stuff courtesy of the company, and then we stayed at Golden Peak Hotel, and we did not even have idea of where to stay, but we just winged it. And we're supposed to have our orientation the next day after the medical exam, which we had successfully. So, well, I was probably blessed that I wasn't alone that time and I had someone with me, just in case I would feel shy or I'd feel lost along the way. And again, it was my first time in Cebu. So during the orientation, everything was fine. Since I was really the introvert type, I did not really participate that much as a newbie during the orientation. But the orientation was a big crowd, so we did not really get to know everyone there. It was a combination of all the new hires for that month. And well, although I felt that I did not really belong, I just felt that it was normal because I was still starting, and that's usually the case, that you will feel if you're still a first timer or first time in the call center. But then after that, after the orientation, we were already led to the floor where we will have our account. I was profiled to a banking account, to my surprise, because during my application, my mock call was about travel. So they probably thought that I had experience with banking and stuff because I put on my resume that I was, one of my summer jobs was to assist with a bookkeeping business. It was my godmother's business, and I had to do some banking and accounting stuff for her. Even though I was a communication arts student. So that's probably why they profiled me for a banking account. But I did not regret a single bit of it. In fact, I was very happy because that account was actually one of the best accounts that company had, and I believe until now. So my first basic salary was 12,000 pesos. That was like 10 to 11 years ago. And because I was profiled for a banking account, the client would add an additional amount of 4,000 pesos to every hire who would be profiled for their account. So that was a total of 16,000 pesos. So for a fresh graduate like me, 16,000 pesos was already really good, really huge for me at that time. But one of the things that I was worried about was that it was banking, and I did not really love numbers and math and anything that has to do with it. And banking, the impression is okay, you have to deal with numbers, you have to deal with money. So that was like one of the biggest worries that I had back then when I was still starting. But you never really have to worry because there will be a training, and what you would have to deal with would be discussed during the training. And that's what happened to me as well. Even though I was worried at first, everything that I needed to do to fulfill my job as a telephone banker would be or was already discussed during my call center training. So as a new hire, I was very diligent, and I was a law-abiding citizen. I would really follow all the instructions, all the rules and regulations as much as I could, without really sacrificing though the art of having fun. Because although I wanted to work in a call center, and I realized it was not that easy, I also wanted to have fun. So during our call center training, there were only 14 of us, and we were like batch 79. We were batch 79. So the account was pretty new, and during our communications training, of course, you will be asked to introduce yourselves, and it was my first time, so you'll probably feel jittery, you'll probably feel nervous and scared. But don't be, because everything will really just go on naturally, and you don't really have to overthink and to think about it too much, because everything will just happen naturally, which was what exactly happened to me. So I just introduced myself normally, and even though I was a little bit anxious because I was new, I tried not to think about it too much and just moved on one day at a time during training. So as a call center trainee, as I've mentioned, I was a very law-abiding citizen. I would always go to work and to class early. I was one of the earliest, and I would never be absent at all. So during the first week of training, my schedule was 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. So it was not that big of adjustment for me, because it's still not that difficult to adjust, since we started in the afternoon until 11 p.m. So it's just normal life. And then when it came to our second week of training, we were moved to a graveyard shift. It was 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. and that was when it hit me. It was really, really difficult to adjust. During my communications training, my friend and I had to go to the HR office to submit our requirements during our 15-minute break, and our trainer was a little strict, and of course every trainer probably would not want the trainees to be late. So every time we were late, every time someone is late, that person had to sing in front of the class. So she was just like one step ahead of us, and we were just behind her. But we were already considered late because it was like 1 second late. So we were asked to sing in front of the class. And just imagine, I was very new and I was asked to sing in front of the class. It was good that I was not alone, because my friend and I were together, and at least someone had to sing with me. We did not do a duet, we had to sing individually. So that was like part of my call center training experience. So if that happens to you, just take it lightly. You do not have to think of it as a punishment. Just probably your trainer's way of having fun, and just make sure that next time you won't be late anymore. During my client specifics or product specifics training, the time when we had to be moved to a 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. class, that was when the challenge started to hit me. So there was one time when the trainer had to ask me a question. I knew that I already knew the answer to that question for sure, but because I was so sleepy and groggy, I was still adjusting to the schedule, I could not answer straight. My answer was a little bit out there, and then my trainer was kind of confused why I was acting that way, and she kept on having me repeat my answer until I could get the right answer. And I think most of my teammates and my batchmates were already looking at me as if they could not believe why I could not answer that very simple question straight. So I just told my trainer that I'm sorry, I'm really sleepy. And I was a bit embarrassed because of that, because she told everyone in the class that this is the real job. So you have to rest and take your sleep seriously. You have to make an effort to adjust, because you will really have to work the night shift and the graveyard shift.